Let me ask you something. If someone walked away from your life today, what do you think would happen tomorrow? You think they'd be free? You think they'd forget you? No, because time doesn't heal what ego destroyed. Time reveals it. And the longer they go without you, the louder the silence becomes. Silence has a way of stripping life down to its bare truth. When someone walks away, they expect noise to replace you. New faces, new conversations, new distractions. But silence doesn't disappear just because they try to outrun it. It follows them into quiet rooms, late nights, long drives, and moments when the world slows down. Silence becomes a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. In that stillness, there's no one to impress, no one to argue with, no one to blame. Just memory, reflection, and the echo of what once was. Absence removes comfort and exposes reality. And that reality starts asking questions they were never ready to answer. In silence, the mind replays what the heart tried to ignore. Every overlooked effort, every dismissed concern, every moment of arrogance comes back with clarity. While you were present, they had the luxury of distraction. Your consistency softened their awareness of your value. But absence sharpens vision. Silence forces them to sit with choices instead of justifying them. And that's uncomfortable because reflection reveals patterns. How you showed up, how you listened, how you stayed longer than most would. In silence, comparison begins. They measure what they have now against what they lost then, and the difference grows louder with each passing day. Silence also removes validation. When you were there, your presence affirmed them. Your attention filled gaps they didn't even know existed. Without you, those gaps become visible. The quiet reminds them how much they relied on your energy, your patience, your belief. Silence highlights dependence, and dependence is hard to admit. It forces a person to confront how much of their strength was borrowed from someone else's steadiness. In the absence of reassurance, insecurity rises. And insecurity has a way of turning reflection into regret. Time deepens that silence. At first, it feels manageable, almost empowering. They tell themselves they're fine, that walking away was freedom. But silence doesn't rush, it waits. It allows the mind to slow down enough to notice patterns. It allows emotions to surface without interruption. And when time stretches on, silence becomes heavier, not because it's loud, but because it's honest. It doesn't flatter, it doesn't excuse. It simply presents the truth that losing something meaningful creates a void no distraction can permanently fill. Silence also exposes contrast. They encounter new people, new situations, new dynamics, and slowly they realize something is missing. Not perfection, presence. Not excitement, consistency. Not words, actions. Silence sharpens the comparison between what was rare and what is common. It teaches them that not everyone listens the way you did. Not everyone cares the way you did. Not everyone stays grounded under pressure the way you did. And that realization doesn't come all at once. It unfolds slowly, painfully, through moments where they expect understanding and receive indifference instead. While they're sitting with that silence, reflection reshapes perception. Things they once minimized begin to feel significant. Moments they brushed off become memories they can't escape. Silence gives those memories space to grow. It allows appreciation to arrive too late, because reflection doesn't ask permission. It arrives when defenses are down. And the longer silence lasts, the clearer the mirror becomes. It shows not just what they lost, but who they were when they had it. And that image is often the hardest one to face. Time has a way of removing illusions. In the beginning, separation feels light. It feels like relief, like control, like proof that walking away was the right decision. In those early moments, value is underestimated because presence made it familiar. What's familiar often feels ordinary, and ordinary things are easy to dismiss. But time creates distance, and distance sharpens awareness. What once felt replaceable begins to feel rare. Time doesn't rush this realization. It lets it mature slowly until denial has nowhere left to hide. As days turn into weeks, the absence starts revealing what was quietly holding things together. Value isn't always loud. Often it's steady, consistent, reliable. Those qualities don't announce themselves when they're present. They prove themselves when they're gone. Time exposes how much effort was unnoticed, how much patience went unacknowledged, how much strength was taken for granted. What they thought was common begins to feel exceptional once it's no longer available. And that realization doesn't come from emotion alone. It comes from experience. Time also tests replacements. New situations, new people, new routines step in, but they don't quite fit the same way. That's when comparison begins, not consciously at first, but instinctively. They notice how conversations feel shallower, how support feels conditional, how loyalty feels inconsistent. Time teaches through contrast. It places new experiences next to old ones and lets the differences speak. And slowly, the mind connects dots it once ignored. Not everyone shows up the same. Not everyone stays steady. Not everyone carries depth. With time, appreciation replaces arrogance. When you were present, they had the illusion of choice. They believed they could find the same energy anywhere. But time proves otherwise. It reveals how rare genuine commitment is, how uncommon real understanding is, how difficult it is to find someone who stands firm without needing applause. Time strips away entitlement and replaces it with clarity. It forces the realization that value isn't measured when something is accessible, but when it's no longer within reach. Time also amplifies memory. Moments that once felt small begin to carry weight. Words replay. Actions resurface. Time gives those memories context, and context gives them meaning. They begin to see patterns they missed before. How you stayed calm when things were tense, how you supported without being asked, how you remained consistent when circumstances changed. Time doesn't let these realizations come all at once. It lets them accumulate, stacking insight upon insight until the full picture becomes undeniable. Distance deepens understanding. When emotions settle, logic takes over. Time quiets defensiveness and softens pride. It allows honest reflection instead of emotional reaction. And in that space, value becomes undeniable. They recognize not just what you did, but what you represented: stability, growth, grounding. Time exposes that some people aren't easily replaced because they weren't just present, they were foundational. And foundations are only truly appreciated once they're removed and everything starts to feel unstable. As time continues forward, realization turns inward. They begin questioning their decisions not out of weakness, but out of awareness. Time forces accountability. It reveals how quickly value can be lost when it's not respected. It teaches that opportunity doesn't wait forever, and that people who bring depth into your life don't always come twice. And the longer time stretches without you, the clearer it becomes that what was lost wasn't temporary. It was significant, irreplaceable, and deeply misunderstood when it mattered most. Growth changes the entire equation. While they expect pain, reaction, or collapse, growth moves in silence. It doesn't announce itself or seek validation. It simply happens day by day, choice by choice, discipline after discipline. Growth is powerful because it doesn't respond to loss with bitterness. It responds with elevation. And that shift confuses people. They anticipated regret, not resilience. They expected resistance, not progress. Growth dismantles their assumptions without you having to say a word. Anger burns fast, but growth lasts. Anger wants to be seen, heard, and acknowledged. Growth doesn't need an audience. It builds quietly in early mornings. in lonely nights, in moments where giving up would have been easier than pushing forward. While they replay the past, you invest in the future. That contrast creates impact. Growth turns emotional pain into productive energy. It redirects focus from what was lost to what's being built. And in that process, power shifts, not through confrontation, but through transformation. Growth also rewrites narrative. They expected to remain relevant in your story, but growth removes them from the center. Your life no longer revolves around explaining, proving, or defending. Instead, it moves toward purpose. When growth begins, anger loses its grip. Bitterness fades because there's no space for it. Progress demands attention, discipline demands commitment, and vision demands clarity. Growth leaves no room for resentment. It replaces it with momentum. Success magnifies distance. The further you rise, the clearer the separation becomes. Growth creates a gap that can't be crossed with regret alone. It highlights the difference between those who evolve and those who remain stuck in old patterns. And when they see you moving forward, calmer, stronger, more focused, it unsettles them. Not because you're loud, but because you're unbothered. Indifference fueled by growth speaks louder than confrontation ever could. Growth also forces reflection on their end. When someone thrives without you, it challenges your sense of importance. It forces the realization that you were not the center of their strength. You were a chapter, not the foundation. Growth reveals independence. It proves that pain didn't break you, it refined you. That realization stings more than anger because it removes the illusion that they still have emotional influence. With growth comes alignment. You begin attracting environments, opportunities, and people that match who you're becoming, not who you were. That alignment creates peace, and peace is intimidating to those who expected chaos. Growth shows that you didn't need revenge, validation, or apology to win. You needed direction. It teaches that the most powerful response to loss is elevation, not retaliation. And when success becomes visible, it doesn't shout, it stands. Replacement is an illusion people cling to when they underestimate value. At first, it feels easy to move on. New faces, new energy, new beginnings. But replacement only works for things that were ordinary. Rare things resist substitution. Their absence lingers because nothing fits the space the same way. People don't miss immediately. They miss when comparison begins to fail, when effort feels inconsistent, when depth feels shallow, when presence feels temporary instead of grounded. What made you rare wasn't perfection. It was consistency. You brought substance where others brought performance. You offered stability in moments that required patience, not excitement. Rare people don't overwhelm with noise, they anchor with reliability. That kind of presence isn't easy to duplicate because it's built over time, not attraction. Replacement exposes that truth slowly. Each interaction that lacks sincerity reminds them of what they once had without fully appreciating. People miss what can't be replicated because it challenges their assumptions. They believed connection was unlimited, that loyalty was common, that understanding could be found anywhere. But rare qualities don't repeat often. When someone listens without judgment, supports without conditions, and stands firm without control, that combination becomes difficult to find again. Replacement attempts fall short not because others are inadequate, but because rarity isn't mass-produced. And that realization creates quiet dissatisfaction. Memory amplifies rarity. Moments resurface uninvited. Your reactions, your patience, your steadiness under pressure. These memories aren't triggered by nostalgia alone. They're activated by disappointment elsewhere. Every time something feels lacking, the mind searches backward for contrast, and rare experiences become benchmarks. They set a standard future encounters struggle to reach. The more time passes, the clearer it becomes that what was lost wasn't just a person, but a quality of connection. People also miss what they can't replace because effort becomes visible in absence. When you were there, your contributions blended into routine. But without you, the weight shifts. They notice how much you carried, how much you absorbed, how much you stabilized. Replacement doesn't offer the same balance. An imbalance creates awareness. It highlights how rare it is to find someone who gives without keeping score, who stays without demanding credit. Rarity echoes because it leaves a lasting imprint. Even when life moves forward, the memory remains present in decision-making, expectations, and emotional reactions. People adjust, but they don't forget. What can't be replaced doesn't disappear. It becomes a reference point. And that reference point influences how they perceive every future connection. Rare things don't need to return to be missed. Their absence is enough to make itself known again and again. Healing is the moment power quietly changes direction. It doesn't arrive with announcements or explanations. It shows up as peace where there was once tension, clarity where there was confusion. While they expect pain to keep you tethered to the past, healing releases you from it. And release is powerful because it removes leverage. When you no longer need answers, validation, or closure, control no longer sits with the one who left. At first, healing feels invisible to others. There are no dramatic gestures, no public victories. But internally, everything changes. Your thoughts become calmer. Your reactions become measured. Your focus shifts from what happened to what's next. Healing creates emotional independence. It means your well-being is no longer tied to their choices or recognition. And when that connection dissolves, influence dissolves with it. Healing also rewrites emotional dynamics. When someone senses they no longer affect you, it unsettles them, not because they want to hurt you, but because influence validates importance. Healing removes that validation. Silence from a healed place carries more weight than anger ever could. It communicates closure without explanation. And that absence of reaction becomes the loudest message of all. As healing deepens, detachment follows. Detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means freedom. You stop replaying conversations, stop revisiting decisions, stop wondering how they feel. Your energy returns to you, and energy is power. Once reclaimed, it fuels growth, focus, and alignment. Healing redirects that energy away from emotional labor and towards self-investment. Power shifts further when your life begins to reflect healing. You become more present, more grounded, more selective. Your standards rise not out of bitterness, but out of awareness. Healing sharpens discernment. You recognize what you will and won't tolerate, what you value and what you deserve. And that clarity makes you unreachable to manipulation, nostalgia, or regret-driven attempts to reconnect. Healing ultimately removes the need for outcome. You no longer require them to understand, admit, or apologize. Their realization becomes irrelevant to your peace. And that's when control fully changes hands. When your happiness no longer depends on their recognition, healing completes its work. Power rests with the one who moved forward, not the one who stayed behind in reflection. Time has no loyalty to pride. It doesn't protect excuses or preserve denial. It moves forward, uncovering truth with patience and precision. At first, regret doesn't announce itself. It whispers. It hides behind confidence, distraction, and justification. People convince themselves they made the right choice because time hasn't challenged them yet. But time always does. It waits until the noise fades and reality settles in. And when it does, regret doesn't need permission to enter. Regret grows in ordinary moments. It surfaces when something familiar is missing and no replacement quite satisfies the space. It appears during quiet victories that feel incomplete, or during setbacks when support is absent. Time gives regret context. It connects past decisions to present consequences. And that connection is uncomfortable because it removes the option to rewrite history. Regret thrives not in drama, but in awareness. Time also removes emotional cushioning. Early on, pride and distraction soften the impact of loss. But as time stretches, those buffers weaken. What remains is clarity, and clarity brings responsibility. Regret becomes heavier when someone realizes the loss wasn't unavoidable. It was chosen. Time exposes how easily value can be dismissed and how permanently it can disappear. That realization doesn't shout, it settles deep and stays. Regret stays loud because it repeats itself. It returns in patterns, not moments. Every disappointment echoes the same thought: this didn't have to be this way. Time reinforces that message through repetition. Each unmet expectation, each shallow connection, each moment of loneliness adds volume. Regret doesn't fade with familiarity, it intensifies with understanding. The more someone recognizes what they lost, the harder it becomes to ignore. Time also forces comparison between potential and reality. Regret grows when people see what could have been alongside what is. Time stretches that gap. It highlights missed opportunities, misjudged priorities, and overlooked effort. And because time cannot be reversed, regret has permanence. It lingers not as emotion alone, but as a lesson that arrived too late. As time continues forward, regret becomes a quiet companion. It doesn't disrupt daily life dramatically, but it influences thoughts, decisions, and expectations. It stays loud in the background of the mind, shaping how future connections are approached. Time never lies because it doesn't soften truth. It delivers it steadily. And once regret is fully understood, it doesn't leave. So don't rush justice. Don't force understanding. Don't waste energy trying to be remembered. Time is already doing the work. Let absence speak where words failed. Let silence teach what presence could not. Let growth, healing, and truth unfold without interference. Because when someone loses something real, time doesn't punish them with pain. It confronts them with awareness, and awareness lasts longer than emotion. You don't need to return. You don't need to explain. You don't need to prove your worth. Time will do what it always does. It will reveal, it will remind, and it will make the loss undeniable.